Alright, so today we have The Giving Tree. It is a story by Shel Silverstein, and it is a childhood story that I was read when I was a kid, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did when I was young. The story was written in 1964, I believe, by Silverstein, and it is a class widely considered a classic, but it has a lot of life lessons to offer and some points to consider. So we'll go through it and then we'll talk about that. So, let's see. We have the story page, and he has dedicated it for Nikki. So here is the tree, and once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. Interesting that it makes it a woman. I don't remember that from the story, but you can see the like a little boy here, and he's stepping into the scene. And every day the boy would come. You can kind of see the tree reaching out there, well, with its limbs, as if beckoning him to come over. And he would gather her leaves. This is something that children love to do. I don't understand why children love gathering leaves, but it brings them no end of delight to do such. And make them into a crown and play king of the forest. It kind of looks like a Caesar's wreath almost. It's a kind of emblem that they would wear on their heads made out of olive branches that you'll learn about in history. And he would climb up her trunk. You can see he took off his shoes and he's climbing up the trunk. There are his little feet. And swing in her branches. You can see his little feet poking out there. And eat apples. You can see the little apple cores coming down. I don't know why apple cores are always depicted like this, but it's an interesting little drawing. And they would play hide and go seek. And you can see him hiding over here behind the rocks. A little unfair advantage because the tree is so tall. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. I don't remember ever comfortably sleeping in a shade of a tree, but I do remember that it was more comfortable than it is as an adult, sleeping as a child under a tree. So you can see the apple cores in his shoes and a little tuckered out boy. And the boy loved the tree very much. He's carved out his name and the T initial in the tree, and the tree was happy. But time went by. You can see the boy getting taller and older, and the boy grew older. And you can see he's brought someone else along with him to the tree, and now he has his initials and the other person's initials drawn in there. YL. Be interesting to look up the author's possible spouse and see if that's their initials. That would be an interesting little Easter egg. And the tree was often alone. Then one day the boy came to the tree, and the tree said, "Come, boy, come and climb up my trunk, swing in my branches, eat my apples, and play in my shade, and be happy." "I am too big to climb and play," said the boy. So he's gotten older. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. Can you give me some money?" "I'm sorry," said the tree, "but I have no money. I have only apples, leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city. Then you will have money, and you will be happy." It's interesting that the tree offers bits of herself to exchange for money in order to substitute for the boy's happiness. And so the boy climbed up the tree and gathered her apples and carried them away. And the tree was happy. Now it's very interesting here that the boy wanted something. The tree offered him a solution, for which he had to work for. He gathered the apples and then went and sold them, and the tree had served its purpose in fulfilling the boy's purpose, and both were happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy. And she said, "Come, boy, climb up my trunk, and swing from my branches, and be happy." It's interesting, he's grown much older in this, but the tree seems to be about the same size. The tree doesn't really change. "I'm too busy to climb trees," said the boy. "I want the house to keep me warm," he said. "I want a wife and I want children, so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" "I have no house," said the tree. "And the forest is my house. But you may cut off my branches and build a house. Then you will be happy." And so the boy cut off her branches and carried them away to build his house. And you can see he's taken all the branches and he's got them loaded up, and he's straining under the weight of it, carrying them off. And the tree was happy. So again, the boy came to the tree with a problem, And the tree told him, well, here's the solution to the problem. And it required him to work and strain and to take these branches away. And the tree was happy, and the boy was happy. But the boy stayed away a long time, and when he came back, the tree was so happy she could hardly speak. "Come, boy," she whispered, "come and play." "I'm too old and sad to play," said the boy. Now it's interesting that he says that he's sad here. "I want the boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat?" "Cut down my trunk and make a boat," said the tree. "Then you can sail away and be happy." So again, this is another time the boy has come, and he's much older at this point. You can see he's lived a very full life, and he says that he's sad, which is interesting because something has made him sad, and the course of his life, there's something has gone wrong, or happened to cause him to despair. And you can see he's carrying a briefcase or a luggage bag here. Presumably something's happened in his life where he's lost his home or his family or something like that, and he needs to get away. And so he's come to the tree, and he has this problem, and the tree has explained to him the solution to his problem, and it's still just requires a lot of work for him to cut down and make this boat. But again, it is a solution to his happiness. And so the boy cut down the trunk and made a boat and sailed away. And the tree was happy, but not really. Now this is the first time that the tree, it is happy, but it's not really happy. And so this, I think, is where a lot of people kind of look at this narrative and say, okay, well, the tree is being used, or it's unhappy that it's being, cut down and destroyed. And it served its purpose, in which all other times has made it happy, but this time it's not really happy. And it may be because it may never see the man again. He's old, and he's taken the tree, he's cut it down, he's carved it out, and he's hauled off with this. And other people have said, well, maybe it's because the tree has given it everything it can, and it has almost nothing left to give. And so it feels, kind of useless. And I think that the tree very much mirrors the man, and that he's worked his whole life in giving, and trying to provide for his happiness and for other people. And he's coming to the end of his life, and he's looking at it, and he still has to work very hard for it, but there's almost nothing left that he can give. And I think the tree very much is in the same way. It's at the stump of its lifespan, and only has the stump left. And after a long time, the boy came back again. "I'm sorry, boy," said the tree, "but I have nothing left to give," which would make sense for the previous statement. "My apples are gone. My teeth are too weak for apples," said the boy. "My branches are gone," said the tree. "You cannot swing on them." "I'm too old to swing on branches," said the boy. "My trunk is gone," said the tree. "You cannot climb." "I'm too tired to climb," said the boy. "I'm sorry," sighed the tree. "I wish that I could give you something." Now the tree sighed and said that it wished it could give him something. "But I have nothing left. I'm just an old stump. I'm sorry." Again, there's this despair kind of by the tree that it doesn't have anything left to provide or usefulness. "I don't need very much now," said the boy, "just a quiet place to sit and rest. I'm very tired." "Well," said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could, "well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down and rest." And the boy did. And the tree was happy. And again, I think that this mirrors the man in that he has found his purpose to sit and reflect and think. He's old and he has nothing left to offer the world. He can't build anything more. He's too frail and too old. And, all that would make him happy, all that he can do left in his purpose is to sit and think and watch and rest. And the same thing with the tree. The tree is also, it is worn down, it has provided everything it can to the world. It has given everything that, has been asked of it. And all that remains for it to do is to sit and provide a place for other people to sit and rest and think. The end. And this is the picture of the author. Now this book was very influential. It's been an award-winning book for 50 years now, I think. And so a lot of lessons to take from this, and people walk away with different interpretations of it. I've read Shel Silverstein's other books. He's a very silly author, but he's also a very poignant and pointed author in his criticisms of society and life, and finding what really values meaning to what is otherwise a chaotic and strange world. If you've ever read The End of the World, that's The End of the Sidewalk, I think it is. I can't remember the title exactly off the top of my head. Or A Light in the Attic. both of them offer, very absurd kind of takes that, when looked at from a certain light, give a very rational view to what is otherwise viewed from that perspective a very irrational world. And I think that this is no different in this short story. You see a man who grows up from boyhood to childhood to adulthood, and finds his purpose and continually comes back to the world as represented by the tree to try to derive happiness by building something or doing something in order to be useful. And the tree mirrors that in providing not only the solution but also the means in order to accomplish that. Now, other people have had takes on this in saying, well, it's actually a warning to children not to abuse your parents and to take advantage of them, which is certainly applicable to the generation before me, or I guess a little after me, in saying the millennials and how they kind of grow up in this privileged lifestyle. This was certainly not the case for Silverstein's generation. And looking at his very hardworking generation, typically very appreciative of their parents, and this entitlement that we see from the millennials, and this new interpretation that comes about from people saying, oh, it's from people taking advantage of their parents. Well, that really wasn't in existence at the time of Silverstein. But as you find in any great work of art, you will continuously find new meanings and interpretations to the truths that are buried within it. And so I think that's certainly a valid point that can be made from the story, is if the parent is the tree and the child growing up kind of just takes and takes and takes, and the tree is left with nothing of it. But I don't really agree with most of the interpretations that I've heard and read on that, and that the story is that the parent should be more selfish. Again, the tree is happy to sacrifice for this child, and as a parent, nothing brings us more pleasure than to sacrifice for the happiness of our children, so long as it is fulfilling to them in the long run and advantageous for their development. So that's an important caveat. And I think that's where the problem with the millennials went wrong, is that their entitlement to their parents' wealth and power and privilege destroyed them in the end, where they took and took and took until there was nothing left to take, and it didn't develop into their moral character or their benefit. And I think that's a very legitimate criticism of the younger generation today. Other things that people look at this as a social welfare or end capitalist state criticism. And so the argument that I've typically heard with that is that the welfare state is the tree giving and giving and giving, and again, with similar to the millennial problem, it doesn't really add to the character development of the individual, and they end up with nothing at the end to show for it until there's nothing left of the welfare state and it basically eats itself. I don't really think that that's a fair criticism. That was not a preponderant problem in society at the time of Silverstein when he wrote this, but again, new interpretation can be derived from that. But if you look at this even today, I really don't see a lot of merit to this interpretation being applied to this book. It certainly is a moral lesson that you can derive from it and teach your children, but not something that is of preeminent concern in the narrative from my reading of it. The end capitalist state, there's always going to be Marxist out there who tries to take every story and derives it into a capitalist versus Marxist ideology. That is the inherent nature of Marxist individuals. I don't really put any stock whatsoever into that, and not sure if I even need to address it, but the idea that this is an end capitalistic state certainly is not the case. We haven't seen necessarily an end capitalistic real society in the world, and by all means and measures, all other countries are becoming capitalistic. And capitalism, as we look at older societies that have embraced it earlier in history, only continue to succeed, expand, and do better for themselves, especially in comparison to any other form of government or system in the world. So much so that even non-capitalistic societies have had to adapt and incorporate capitalistic ideals into their own ideology and governments in order to maintain themselves. So, in that regard, no, we're not really a criticism of end capitalism. So, maybe crony capitalism, but that's another conversation for another time. Um, Religious aspects to this book. Wonder if there's any significance to the fact that the tree gives him apples at the beginning, maybe fruit of temptation. You could possibly make an argument for that, but again, I don't necessarily see that as a uh, focus of this book. Perhaps you could link it into the parental argument or analysis and saying that the tree is acting as a loco parentis in that it is a god figure that gives us the tree, but the fruit is not forbidden. It's actually welcomed in this aspect. Perhaps you could say that the tree is acting as a temptress in order to convince the child to corrupt the forest. But again, that doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really hold water if you read the rest of the story and the fact that the tree is happy and the boy is happy and that you know the absence of the boy from the society or from the tree doesn't really doesn't really mesh with the concept that's being conveyed in the story. So I don't really buy that either. I really think that the focus of the story is finding your purpose and pursuing it and deriving meaning from your life. I think that the tree is more a representation of the world, the material world, and the obstacles that people have to overcome in order to get what they want, and finding a use in things that sometimes seem useless or completely used up. Which is a good environmental message as far as recyclables and renewable resources. I think that that's promising, and ingenuity to see things as useful even when they're discarded as trash. So I hope that you enjoyed the story, and we'll do many more. And thank you for watching.